Today, I'm going to be answering the question, is racism impacting your child's education? What's up? It's your girl, Dr. Tureka Lewis, otherwise known as Dr. Lou, your partner in success and progress, and I help people to empower themselves using training and education. Over the years, I've carried many titles, from principal to educator, from preacher to project manager, and even CEO at some point. But the most important title I believe that I carry today is the title of your partner in success and progress. And that's because I take very seriously my role in your journey and in your success journey. So today I'm going to be answering the question, is racism impacting your child's education? I was inspired to talk to you about this topic today after a recent speaking engagement in which I was asked how I cope with racism as well as colorism and sexism. I was shocked that the attendees to the event that I was speaking at really had the forethought to ask that question in that way and ask about those separate things, because we kind of lump everything in the category of racism, but those things are very separate, but there's an intersection where all those things meet in the experience of a Black woman or a woman of color. So I found it interesting and I answered the questions and I moved on, and then I had one very young participant ask me this question, and I want to read it to make sure that I don't miss any part of it. What powerful words and motivation would you offer to young people struggling with depression and anger because of racism? That question got me, because as a parent, I tend to teach my kids like a lot of other parents do, and that's kind of in a vacuum. I teach them about real world experiences. I teach them how to overcome obstacles and how to deal with life. So it's not that I teach them in a fairy tale land, but at the same token, we often teach our kids in idealistic ways. Even when we're teaching them how to handle something that they're experiencing, we teach them from the perspective of a perfect world. That child asking me and mentioning racism in the same sentence as depression and other emotions that are really heavy got me to thinking about how this world that we are fighting to deal with today is impacting kids. And not just that, but it really forced me to face how real these struggles are. I live in America, the United States of America. Most of the people watching this video probably do too. We've been heavily impacted by racism since this country was... I've been impacted by racism since before I was born. As a matter of fact, this country has been shaped and impacted by racism since it was established. And because of that, it's the low-lying hum underneath every single experience that we have. So it's easy to forget sometimes that kids are experiencing this as a new phenomenon. They are being surprised and shocked, whereas we have gotten tone deaf and callous to it. We are used to it. And so it's important, if you are a parent or an educator or somebody that's encountering kids, that we don't forget to include them in the conversation. I have gotten quite courageous about talking to my adult friends about things that impact me because of race or other isms, but I haven't necessarily had conversations with kids about it, unless they're my kids. And then I'm preparing them to face a world where racism exists, sexism exists, colorism exists, and so many other isms, and just the things that they're going to face in everyday life as they try to live their best life and be who they were made to be. And for a lot of us, we're facing it every day. But as far as kids having to deal with the topic of racism, a lot of kids don't even realize that that's what they're dealing with when they're dealing with it. So this was an important topic for many reasons, including that young lady that asked me that question. It changed my perspective and how I want to incorporate my authentic truth in my work. But we're going to look at a few videos that have gone viral because of encounters with educators and the racist tendencies, undertones, and in some cases, the overt racist rants that have happened lately. So I'm going to get right into it. We're going to look at the first video, and I'm going to answer my question that I posed at the beginning, and that is racism impacting your child's education right now? Now, this first video, the reason that I included it is because it's a college educator, because we don't hear too much about incidents involving racism in college classrooms. So let's look at this.
The fallout from what was supposed to be a private Zoom conversation between two Georgetown Law School professors that went very public. One professor fired for racist comments, the other on administrative leave. TJ Holmes joins us now with that. Good morning, TJ.
And I quote, Stray, a lot of my lower ones are blacks. And it's like, come on, end quote. Now imagine being a black student at one of the most prestigious law schools in this country and have to hear your professor say that about you.
You know what? I hate to say this. I end up having this, angst every semester that a lot of my lower ones are blacks. Happens almost every semester.
The video call was between Sellers, who has taught at the school for nearly 20 years, and Professor David Batson, another Georgetown law professor. Part of the recording was posted online. In the clip, Sellers claims her black students routinely grade lower than her other students.
And it's like, oh, come on. Get some really good ones, but there are also usually some that are just plain at the bottom. It drives me crazy.
Georgetown terminated Sellers and placed Batson on administrative leave while the school's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Affirmative Action investigates, saying Batson has been removed from any involvement he has in the course he was discussing with Sellers.
So on the surface, the first thing I noticed is she started out trying to be politically correct. And for a lot of people, that allows the first part of her statement to just kind of fly under the radar. When she said, I hate to say it, and I feel angst each semester, you almost feel like she cares a little bit about the fact that students that she considers to be the blacks, later on we hear her say, are scoring lower than other students. As an educator, I can tell you that dance that she was doing looked a lot like her angst was coming from the fact that she didn't know how the students' grades were going to impact her as an educator. Her bottom line, her proof of effectiveness, what her employee reviews were going to look like. Didn't sound like she was worried about the students to me. And her hating to say it was just because, I hate to say it because I know this is not deemed politically correct, but this is how I feel. She said, I hate to say it, almost as if she was saying, you know what? I hate to admit it, but this just proves that they're not as smart. That was the undertone. I've seen it a million times in educators. I know what it looks like. And she was talking to her cronies. She thought she was perfectly safe saying that. And that's the problem. Had we not had this Zoom video, this lady would still be in a classroom, failing black students and pitying them while she watched them walk out the door. That's the problem, is that underlying tendency to believe that the results of her class are indicators that all of those students are underperformers is the problem. Because this feeds into the mindset that affirmative action and so many other civil rights era remedies were really not necessarily a mistake, but they were meant to be temporary, and that a lot of people expected them to prove by allowing black students to sit in the classroom with white students that they were inferior. And if you already believe that going in and you have the power of the pen, you're the instructor, you're the educator, you tell me where the child has a chance to prove you wrong. If all the students score low on a test, the K-12 educator is dinged for it. They get impacted by it. They get paid less and they get penalized eventually. So either we're wrong in saying that, and I'm not advocating that or disavowing it. I'm just saying you can't have this dichotomy of approaches in the American education system and think things are going to just shake out in the end. So either we owe those teachers an apology and it's really just the kids and we need to accept the fact that they're not as bright, or we need to look at it the same way we look at why those measures were put in place. That was because leadership at the time felt that students in underserved communities weren't getting the same level of education as students in other communities, and they wanted to light a fire underneath educators and in the education system and incentivize the educators and those leading in the education system to do more for those students to bridge the gap. That led to more money for programs, that led to more money for educators that have figured out a way to bridge that gap. And it wasn't supposed to be an incentive to cheat or make black students look better than they were. It was an incentive to give them what I would say is more than a fair chance, it's equity. And I know that we like to say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and all of us had adversity and those kids should, but no. Other students who don't have those same disadvantages walking into the classroom, they didn't have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And if they did, they had a brand new pair of boots with a really strong strap compared to the kid that has no boots at all. So that's a problem for me. That's a huge problem for me. And by her reluctance to say it and the way that she said it, I really feel like she was really saying, it's the truth. I hate to say it because I know I could get in trouble for it, but you and I both know that what I'm saying is true. So I had a problem with that. If most of the kids that score low in her class are black children or children of African descent, students of African descent, because they're going to be young adults, then chances are we need to look at what's happening in her classes. We can't just blame it on the kids. We can't just say that they're underachievers and low performers. Because if we were looking at any other group, let's say we had a classroom full of boys and girls, all of the lowest test scores were girls, we wouldn't assume that girls can't learn as well as boys. We would look at what's happening in that classroom and between home and the classroom that is impacting those students. We would do that for girls to boys. Why is it that when the black child is the object of concern, why is it that we automatically want to look for excuses for why others have made judgments about them that are unfair and biased?